Welcome to the Catholic Charities Netsmart training video. I will be your instructor for the day. My name is Robert Manfredi. Sit back and enjoy, because today you're going to learn how to use the Netsmart Avatar product. The My To-Dos widget can be a little confusing to some people at first. We suggest you watch this video and then determine whether or not you wish to watch it a second time. We're going to be alternating back and forth between this slide in Microsoft Word, which explains all the different scenarios of how something can go on your to-do list, and the actual Netsmart avatar screen, which is this, which shows the My To-Do list exactly as you would see it. Now, we've actually made this a little bit larger than what you would normally see. And the way we did that was the same way we would adjust any widget, and that is if you put your cursor between the edges of widgets, you're able to resize them. So as you can see, I'm resizing these widgets so that the My To-Do list is really big. For the purposes of this demo, that makes a lot of sense. You probably wouldn't want it looking like this in the real world when you're doing your processing. Now, let's take a look just very quickly at what this looks like. The My To-Do list has multiple columns. You have a client column, which is the client in question, an action column, which is generally not very helpful, a form column, and this form column sometimes lists the notes that are there and sometimes it doesn't, and we're going to go into detail on that, a sent column, and the sent column is when the item went on your to-do list. Please realize that the sent column doesn't necessarily mean the date that the appointment was. For example, let's suppose, and if we look at this first column, or excuse me, this first row, Bob Velez, do not click here, sent on 4/5, and the comment is requires a note, if we look at the very end there. How this item was placed on the to-do list was that a checkout occurred and a note was not written yet for that appointment. So let's repeat. The front desk staff saw that a note wasn't written, did a check-in and a check-out, and at the checkout time, that's when this item went on the to-do list. But let's suppose that the front desk staff was really busy, and yesterday on 4/4 was when the note was supposed to, or when the appointment was. But they didn't get to do the checkout until, say, early on 4/5 in the morning. Well, it went on your list on 4/5, but that's not the date of the service. It was actually 4/4. And the way that you know for sure what the date is you have to read the embedded text within the comments field. This one actually was done on 4/5, but you always have to verify it because you can't be certain that the checkout occurred on the same day. It will in most cases, but it certainly won't in all. The last column is the comments. And the comment is really where the meat and potatoes of the to-do list is, because it tells you what you need to do. But the reality is that you have to look at all the columns together as a whole, because no one column tells you what is actually necessary to be done. So let's go back to our Word document and see what all the different cases are. Well, we said about the first one where there was a checkout with no note written. What happens? In the action column, it's going to say do not click here. In the form column, it's going to say do not click here. And in the comment column, it's going to say service ABCD for service date, blah, 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 episode, whatever, requires a note. So let's go back and take a look at that. Client Bob Velez, action is do not click. The form name is also do not click. When it was sent, and the important thing is requires a note. So this tells us that a checkout had occurred and we haven't written the note yet. So the obvious question is, how do I write the note? Well, we don't ever want to click where it says do not click here. I think that's pretty self-evident. What you have to do is go into the regular form system, the column here that's all scrunched up, so we'll make it a little bit wider. and you're going to type in whatever the form, NICE form that you want to use is. Let's suppose it was the NICE individual counseling and psychotherapy note. You're going to bring that note up, put Bob Velez's name in. You're going to find the existing service, and you're going to fill out the rest of the form, and you're going to submit it. That's how you address doing this to-do item. All right, so we don't want to do that, so I'm going to shrink this back up. So that's how we would process this. Now, why does this say do not click here, but it's a hyperlink and allows me to click? I'm going to do what I'm going to tell you never to do after this, and that is I'm going to click where it says do not click here. What it's actually bringing up is an incorrect form. It looks good, it's got some fields on it, and it looks kind of familiar because it's the same kind of fields that are on all of your progress notes. But if you enter in here, you will not be doing an NICE note, it will not have all the required fields, and ultimately we will not get paid for this service because we haven't met the requirements of our funding sources for all the information that needs to be collected for a note. So do not click here is the name of this form, and I can't stop this form from coming up, but I'm going to exit out of here. I can make it as obvious as possible that you're not supposed to do this. All right? So let's go and see the next class of forms. It's going to be these next three items, which are really drafting. So let's go back and see what the three draft concepts are. There are three ways that a draft item can get put on. You could have done a note, both an individual or a group. You can have done an assessment or an IAP, and in any case for all three or four, depending upon how you want to count, of those cases, you said, I didn't want to finish the note at this point, or the assessment or the IAP. I want to put in draft form and come back to it later. Whenever you do that, it's going to go on your to-do list so that you don't forget about it and give you an opportunity to fill it in later and to complete the process and finalize. Now, for the action column, all of them are going to say review to-do item. And see how it says don't click? Well, we don't ever want you to click there. So let's go back. And these three items that are, say, review to-do items, which are a hyperlink, and it says click to open, but you don't want to do that. All right? Even though it says to, we're telling you not to. I'm going to do what we're telling you not to do just to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to click the review to-do item. And a form is going to come up that gives me the opportunity to set the to-do item to be reviewed. If I click this and submit it, effectively what's going to happen is it's going to come off my to-do list, which sounds great. Hey, look how easy it was for me to knock this item off my to-do list. Unfortunately, the note was still never finished, which means we're never going to get paid for this service, and it's going to be hanging out as an orphan in the back of this system. So even though you have the ability to shoot yourself in the head, we don't want you to do that. So if you ever come up to the screen that says review to-do item, you know that you're supposed to red X out and close without submitting. So these review to-do items, you never want to click. As a matter of fact, all the review to-do items, you never want to click. It's always a bad choice. So review to-do, you will never do. Now we said there were three different kinds of forms that you could draft. You could draft an individual note, you could draft an assessment, and you could draft an IAP. Now if you notice, the assessment and the IAP have hyperlinks. You can actually click them to open the document to finish it. For the individual counseling or any of the progress notes, there's no hyperlink. Now it seems inconsistent, and it is, but there's a reason why for progress notes you can't click a hyperlink. Any of the forms which on the form itself at the very top ask you to select the client, and that's all of the progress notes, those forms can't hyperlink in because of how the software operates. So it's a little annoying, but as long as you know that this is a note which I then have to go to my form list, type in individual counseling, bring the note up, enter what I have to, and then submit it. And for these forms, the Adult Comprehensive and the IAP, these I can hyperlink directly in. It'll take me right to where I left off, and I can complete the process. All right? The thing that's odd also is that for a note, it says review draft. For an assessment, it's going to say a user-defined notification has been received. And for the IAP, it's going to say draft IAP information, and this is the plan name that we'd put in for reviewing. I wish the wording here could be consistent as well to say draft blah blah blah, draft blah blah blah, draft blah blah blah, but it doesn't. So we just have to accept that. So let's go back to our Word document. So to review, it says anything that says review to do item, we're not going to click. For our draft note, which is just this column, there'll be an actual form name, but there's no hyperlink, so we can't click it. But for our assessment and IAP, there will be an actual form name, and we can click those hyperlinks. All right, so what's next? Approving a document. Now remember what we said before. If you write a note and you are an intern, or you are someone that for whatever reason that note is going to have to go to a supervisor or to a doctor or to someone else, you have the ability to route notes, assessments, and IAPs to somebody else for approval. And again, that'll be a separate document, separate video that'll show how to do that. But for our purposes, we're just going to talk about it. So let's suppose someone did a note or an assessment or an IAP, and now they want to route it to someone else for approval. Well, the person who's the approver is going to get those items on their to-do list. And these are what's going to happen. You're going to have an approved document link, and those are going to be acceptable to click, and there's going to be form names which we don't want you to click. So let's take a look at what it looks like in the system. Well, we have 3 documents here in a row that say approve. Carrie Brown has a note written against her that we're supposed to review. Melanie has a note, has an assessment that was done that we're supposed to approve. And Vince has an IAP that was done. Oh, I'm sorry. It's another adult comprehensive assessment. Apparently I don't have an IAP here. But he has an assessment that was done that we have to approve. So we have 3 documents that give us the ability to approve it. Some have links, or actually all 3 of them have links. We don't ever want to click the link for the form. We always want to click the link for where it says approved document. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It gives you the summary of what the note, the assessment, or the IAP was. And by summary I mean any values that were entered, anything that you typed in, or the person before you typed in, into that document will appear. I can scroll up and down, take a look at it, and then I can either accept or reject. If I accept it, it's going to ask me for my password, and it's going to be done at that point. That document will be completely final, it'll come off my to-do list, and no one will ever see it again. Well, see it in the form that it's on a to-do list, of course. It's always re-accessible through the system. I can reject the document, and if I do that, I'm going to put in the reason for it. I'm not going to do either right now. I'm going to just close this form. And you know what? I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to just go back to home for right now. So for these 3 items, which give me the ability to approve, I click in and then I can either accept or reject. Now I also have the ability to go directly into the form, but I don't want you to do this. I'm going to show you what happens if you do. If you click in, it says the selection is set to final. Data may be viewed only. Remember, the first person that wrote it, the original author, wrote this, finalized it, and I can bring it up to look at it, but I can't do the approving from here. So if I click here, or click into this form, there's no method for me to approve the document. So the only thing I can do is look at it, see it in detail, but really just close it out. So are you sure you want to close without submitting? Yes, I am. So even though I can click these for the approve, it adds no value. So we always want to just click the approve document. And from there, it doesn't mean that I'm saying I approve. It's saying it gives me the ability to approve or reject. So let's go back to our Word document and see what the next class of items on a to-do list would be. Rejections. Well, let's suppose I wrote a document and I sent it to my supervisor for approval. And the supervisor didn't like it for whatever reason. They can reject it. And they can reject a note, an assessment, or an IAP. And the wording in the comment column is identical. The wording in the action column is identical. It's all going to say review. And remember, anytime you see the word review in the action column, you never want to click it. And under the form column, you have the ability to click a link for the assessment, but not for a note. So let's go back for a second, and let's see what this looks like. Here we have 3 documents that were rejected. So let's follow this across. James Hamilton. There's a button for review, which we never want to click because it says review. The form is an individual counseling note, so we know this is a progress note. And the document was rejected for the following reason. Note does not address goals. This wording, note does, actually it says note does address goals. It's supposed to say note does not address goals. All right, I typed that in wrong. But this wording here is what happens when you reject and you have the ability to type in some text. That's the text that was typed in. Same thing for this next one. Assessment not up to agency standards. There needs to be more goals. Those wordings were typed in by the person who was this supervisor or the person who it was routed to. They rejected it and sent it back to you. So at this point, if we look, we have 3 items that were rejected, and now we have to do something with it. We have to fix the problem. All right? Even though we finalized it before it got sent out, when someone rejects it, it goes back into a draft state. And that makes sense because I can't ever type into something that's finalized. So unless it got converted back to a draft state, I would not be able to do anything. So we already said that for the progress note, there's no hyperlink. I can't click here. You can hear me clicking. And again, that's the same philosophy as why I can't click the individual counseling note here that was drafted. Why? Because any of the forms that are progress notes, you can't hyperlink back into. It's just not possible with this system. That's why we can't have a link there. For the adult comprehensive assessment, if I click this, and I'm not going to, it would actually bring that form up right to where I left it off and allow me to fix whatever the rejection reason was. I could put, in this case, the assessment was not up to agency standards for this line. So I could go in and then start to fix the deficiencies that were in that document. You also note that I can't hyperlink in for an IAP if it was rejected. I'm going to have to bring that up through the form method, through the form widget, the same way I would a NICE form, a NICE progress note. Now, the last 2 items here are group notes. So let's go back to our Word document and see that if a group note was started, remember when you do a group note, and if you haven't done the video on how to do a group note, please take that immediately after this session. But when you do a group note, you do it in 2 stages, at least 2 stages. Stage 1 is where you fill in the base information about the note that's true for everyone in the group. So you put in the general notes. This was a lively session. People were very engaged. We talked about how drinking is bad for us. The general information about what was covered that's applicable to all members of the group. At that point, you have the ability, and you have to, do an interim file save. When you do that, if there were 3 members in your group, then you'll have 3 items put onto your to-do list to complete. If there were 6 people in the group, then you'd have 6 entries on your to-do list. So basically, when you finished the group section, we look down here, of the note, and you have not yet started the individual session, those items will go on the to-do list. So we're going to go back and take a look at what that looks like. For here, we can see that Taylor Swift had a group note, but hers was actually drafted. Remember, this is what a draft looks like, review draft. So we're not referring to that to Taylor for this case. But if we look at Robert Jones, we can see that a note was written, and that's it. This is what it looks like with no clicking here, no clicking here. This is the line of what looks like when a person has started a group note, done the group section of the group note, and submitted and filed, but has not done the individual section for Robert Jones. This is what it looks like. So let's look at what the next case is for Taylor. For Taylor, we're going to say that we brought her record up, we started to write the individual portion of her group note, and then drafted it. Now you're probably never going to want to do that. Why? Because it's kind of a waste, because there's not that much additional information that needs to be entered. But if you took a group note for one of the people in the group, started it, and drafted it, this is what it looks like. It'll say the person's name, review to-do item, the form will be the nice group note, and it'll say review draft. Now if you notice, this line here for George Clooney looks identical, with the only difference being the form name. So whether it's an individual note that you're writing for a person and drafting it, or whether it's a group note that you're drafting for one of the people within the group, the line looks exactly the same. And in all cases, you never want to click Review To-Do item. So let's take a look back at the bigger picture. All right, let's go back to the Word document for a moment. We can see that you can draft things and they get put on the to-do list. You can approve a document, and then whoever that supervisor or the approving person is will get something on their to-do list. You can reject a document by the supervisor can reject it, and then it will go back to the original author, and that would put something on their to-do list. You can start a group note and not do the individual sessions yet, and that will put something on the to-do list, actually multiple items. And the front desk person has the ability, by doing a checkout, if you haven't written a note yet, which is this first line, to put something on your to-do list. So there's lots of different reasons why something will go on the to-do list. And I'd like to actually add one or two more. This is all note-driven or form-driven. Progress notes, assessments, and IAPs. Additionally, for some of our forms, we have to do them on a regular basis. For example, assessments are due, depending upon what program you are, every 90 days, every 180 days, but due on some sort of a frequency. We've set the system up that if a form needs to be done on any sort of a cyclic basis, it will add an item to your to-do list X number of days beforehand. We haven't decided what that is. It might be a week, it might be 2 weeks before, but an item will go on your to-do list as well if a form needs to be done on a cyclic basis and it's coming due soon. So let's go back right now and look at our to-do list. And let's look at the bigger picture. Well, I think we're all starting to feel some level of comfort for the client list. The action column is going to have one of 3 things listed. Review to-do item, right here, which you'll never click. Approve document, which you will always click. And do not click here, which hopefully is self-evident that you do not want to click there. For the form column, you have hyperlinks in to open up a form. Sometimes you want to do it, and sometimes you don't. Let's see if we can remember why. Well, here I have the ability to open a form up, and to the left it says Review To-Do Item. This would be something that I would want to click. But you never want to click on a form where on the left of it says Approve Document. Remember, when we did that, it gave you the ability to open the form, right? It hyperlinked in, it looked like it worked, and it actually does. It brings the form up, but I can only look at it. So I can't actually do the approval process. So with that in mind, I probably never, and I can tell you I never want you to, click here, a form, if on the left-hand side it says Approve. Because I always want to click the Approve. The Approve has the more important value because it's going to bring the document up in a summary form and allow me to look at it and say I either approve or reject this document. Going back up, here we have a form that I can click to, and to the left says Review, so I'm going to want to do that. Same here. This one there's no hyperlink, and this one there's no hyperlink. The comments column is used in conjunction with the form and the action so that you know what you're supposed to do. Now, this is one of the most complex topics within the Netsmart avatar system. I strongly suggest you watch this video a second time to truly get an understanding of how the to-dos work. It's not really that complicated, but it is a learning curve, absolutely, because sometimes you're supposed to click and sometimes you're not, and it doesn't always seem obvious. Hopefully after watching this video once or a second time, it should become more obvious to you and you should feel comfortable with it. Thank you for watching this Catholic Charities Netsmart training video. Please be sure to watch the others in the series for a further understanding of the Netsmart Avatar product.